United States of America uses all over the world. So we can't make any amendments. So the agreement which went to the plenary for ratification, which, as you know, was done by the majority side of the House, because after making our point in protest, we walked out, is the same agreement which you guys in the media presented to us. No T was crossed, no I was dotted, no comma, no full stop, no amendment. So what was that public charade about? In the public, out there, you tell Ghanaians that we didn't execute, we didn't sign, because we want our parliament to make an input. We want parliamentary scrutiny. And yet when you brought it to parliament, in-house, in committee, in closed doors, you tell us that we cannot make amendments. And so some, the agreement as ratified now, there was no amendment made. And so Parliament was just invited for a rubber stamp exercise. We were just being used in a certain unhelpful gimmickry. And that is why if you read the report, and I have here the report of the Joint Committee on Defense, Interior, and Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, you notice that all the concerns of the minority are stated in the report, but that is how far we could go. It's only in the report. So if you look at paragraph 6.4 of the committee's report, under the heading Freedom of Movement of Vehicles, Vessels and Aircrafts, it reads, some members of the committee noted with concern the unfettered access the agreement grants to the aircraft, vehicles, and vessels of the U.S. Department of Defense to enter, exit, and freely move within the territory, airspace, and territorial waters of Ghana. This may appear to undermine the sovereignty and security of Ghana, unquote. So it's only in the report of Parliament. Now, this report is of no legal effect, because the concerns that the minority raised, which only found its way in the report, but the agreement itself, we were told that we could not touch it. So it tells you that the government only decided to use Parliament and just as it were, engage in a dishonest misuse and abuse of the parliamentary process. So that is the second opportunity that was missed, the second leadership opportunity that was missed. I've told you that the first opportunity was during the discussion, when this agreement leaked to the media. Our initial statement as a minority was that invite everybody, create a forum for thorough discussion, don't rush this process. We were ignored. The second leadership failure on the part of President Akufo-Addo, who championed this agreement, was to use Parliament as a rubber stamp, as just a pawn, and indeed to just abuse the parliamentary process. And so I have heard people say that, oh, you in the minority, you had the opportunity to make an input. It's not true. Then they say that at a point, you were 14 at the committee. If you are 14 and the majority are 10, which indeed is true, the question to ask is that why did the chairman refuse to declare a division as our standing orders demand, so that there will be a vote? Just being majority at a meeting doesn't help you if there is no opportunity to take a decision. So a division was not declared. Those of us in the majority were not allowed to exercise that majority. In other words, there was no voting. And that is why that initial propaganda that, oh, ignore the minority, they could have thrown this out. You notice that they have run away from that sense. So that was the second opportunity missed. Now the third leadership failure, SAMMY, had to do with having railroaded the process. We had worked out. And we said that, Mr. President, this is a very important matter bordering on our relations with the United States of America, our foreign relations, our image as a country, our national security, our sovereignty. It should not be a matter that should take this nature. It should not be a matter that should be reduced to heated political confrontations. Now we are hearing threats of demonstrations and all of that. Still, the president would not listen and engage. So you saw what then culminated in the Ghana First demonstration. And as you do know, that demonstration turned out to be a huge success, a mammoth one, which should have sent a very clear message to President Akufo-Addo that Ghanaians are concerned. And you see, if you read the Ghanaian constitution, the very first article, sovereignty resides in the people. Not all countries have that. So, the people of Ghana are the safeguards of our sovereignty. And so, if the people are raising concerns, we ought to be listening to the people. Third leadership failure. Demonstration ignored. The next day, we rather saw the president cutting cakes, celebrating his birthday all over. There were, I think, 3 celebrations in a day. He decided to rather change the name of the Flagstaff House to Jubilee House, and just wanted to tell the demonstrators that, look, I have better things on my mind. You guys can do all you want. Then I believe that when all the publications in the international media, BBC, Al Jazeera, Washington Post, New York Times, Reuters, Fox News, and all of them, and the groundswell, and he saw that, look, if you even look at the people who attended the demonstration, to have the former Vice President, His Excellency Pakwisi Bekuni Misata, I don't remember the last time I saw the old man look that long and join a demonstration. Remember, he was chairman of the Police Council, one of the longest serving public officials we've had in this country. He's been in government for 20 and more years. So when he reads agreements of this nature, he will know if all of these concerns are just much ado about nothing or not. He was out there with demonstrators. Former National Security Minister, the Honorable Kofi Totobi Kwachi. And I saw ambassadors. Ambassador is Edith Hazel, former ministers Oreku Amufwa, Spio Gambra, and all the others. PNC leading members, CPP leading members, the CPP youth when declared support, they were there. Members of parliament, PPP, members, Hassan Ayariga's party, and all of that. So this is not a matter which is an issue of a few opponents of the president, or people who don't wish the president well. So there have been many leadership failures. And that is what has brought us to this point. So reluctantly and grudgingly, and after all the pressures, the president finally decides to speak. When I saw the notice that the president was going to speak. And indeed, in my open letter, I had stated what I expected of the president. I thought that the president would speak, allay fears, give assurances, unify the country, ease tensions, take this debate away from the streets, and as I proposed, he should create a small forum. The former presidents have raised concerns, former President Rawlings, former President Mahama. Invite them, invite former President Kufuor, invite Dr. Obeda Samuel, His Excellency Pakwesi Misarata, the likes of Dr. Kobe Mensah, who are concerned, Professor Akila Pasoya, minority leadership, leaders of all the inter-party coalition. Small meeting, this will not be even up to 15 people. You may decide to add a few more experts. Then I also said in the open letter, invite the generals who have raised concerns, Chief of Defense Staff, current and former, who have raised concerns. Only yesterday I had Brigadier General Nuno Mensah, the only two-time Chief of Defense Staff Ghana has produced. Raise concerns. So invite all these people and then let's engage. Let's see how certain clauses can be improved, how matters that are offensive can be removed, and all of that. Let's bring clarity to this agreement. Sam, what did we see? The president decided to rather declare war on his citizens. And I couldn't agree more with the Daily Guide, the newspaper that everybody knows has sympathies for the MPP and the ruling government. The caption today is Nana stokes fire over US military deal. The Daily Guide could not have come up with any better caption. But that is not what we expected of our president. We did not expect that our president and commander-in-chief will come stoke fires, will come and pour petrol in an already highly inflammable situation. Sam, what the president did Thursday night was to show that as a leader, he is not tolerant, that he is not inclusive. He was very, very condescending. He used very offensive language. I mean, to describe Ghanaians who are raising concerns as hypocrites, as cynical manipulators. He said reckless self-seekers. Then he said that ignore them. Some of them secretly benefit from the largesse of the United States of America. And then engage in whip-fanning anti-American sentiments. I couldn't believe it, sir. I couldn't believe what I was watching. Your citizens, your fellow countrymen and women, have raised genuine concerns. They have genuine apprehensions. They have demonstrated. They are writing articles. I mean, they have clearly stated that they have germane issues that have nothing to do with politics or a dislike for you. At the demonstration, I took a photograph with somebody who came there with a placard that I thought was very nice. He said, Mr. President, I love you. I voted for you. but I don't support this agreement. I took a picture with him, and this is on my Facebook. It's on my Facebook page. So for the president to adapt that very, very condescending, very arrogant approach. I've heard people say that, our president is really practicing the dead goat syndrome. I said, this is worse than that. Dead goat syndrome is just, I'm not listening to you. But this one, I'm not only listening to you, but I'm also coming after you and attacking you. This is a wild lion syndrome. And you see, the content of the speech that the president presented. The president did not throw light, came to stoke the fires, as the Daily Guide reports today. And he engaged in a lot of insincerity. For example, when the president begins his address by saying that a friend of his last week, at the height of the furore, called on him and said, Mr. President, why are you departing from what your predecessors do? This, your love for democracy, this your democracy thing will be your undoing. And that your predecessors had done this agreement in secret. You should have done same. The president was being disingenuous. The president failed to admit that after the Gitmo 2 Supreme Court decision on Article 75, no president after that decision has a choice. Because you see, this has been a gray area. And successive governments, since the era of President Rawlings, President Kufuor, President Mills, President Mahama, the understanding had been that diplomatic notes, exchange of diplomatic notes, note verbal, these agreements don't have to be sent to Parliament for ratification. And so there are several agreements, there are hundreds of them, all over with so many countries that did not receive parliamentary ratification. What the president even fails to tell Ghanaians is that the 1998 agreement he talks about, if you read Article 19 of the current agreement, it reveals that that agreement came into force March 2000. There was an election in December. So the political party that really executed the agreement, that really operated the agreement, the 1998 agreement, is the MPP for 8 years. President Akufo-Addo then was Attorney General. If he was consistent, so minded about transparency and all of that, he could have brought the 1998 agreement to Parliament when he was Attorney General. He did it. They operated with the agreement. They saw nothing wrong with it. And there were several other agreements, including a 2007 agreement, which they executed, which did not come to Parliament. So the president was not exactly sincere with that assertion to say that he is opting for transparency. He was not being sincere. The Gitmo 2 decision is the deciding factor. So you notice that now all successive governments after the Gitmo 2 decision have no choice in the matter. Now there is clarity. Previously, there was a great deal of uncertainty. There was haziness. There was ambiguity. And so all governments went on a certain path. And that tangent did not allow them, or did not make them think that it was essential to bring such agreements to Parliament for ratification. But you see, what is even more troubling when you listen to the president portray himself as the only transparent leader that Ghana has ever had, is the contradictions In one breath, Sam, you are touting your transparency credentials, your unparalleled openness and all of that, and your willingness to even ignore the dangers associated to that. And yet, you take on the media for leaked documents. Unbelievable. You should have been happy. You don't need to raise any worries at all. You should just even encourage the media that they should support you to be more open. But to take on the media for leaking documents prematurely and to even indict the media and their collaborators is most shocking. But Sam, talking about leakages, Sam, in this whole Ghana-US Defense Cooperation matter, where have the leakages come from? Who put out the 1998 agreement? Who put out the 2015 agreement? Last week, who put out that agreement that backfired, that apparently President Mahama had allowed the Americans here for 5 weeks? 5 weeks. Who put out that agreement? Then the latest one, seeking to take on the venerable and distinguished Colonel Bevlo Latte, that he also signed an agreement with the Americans to come and train, use Ghana as a training center. Who put out those agreements? And if you listen to the defense minister himself in parliament during the ratification, he says that all these agreements were not available anywhere. That is the Americans who gave it to them. So at least the defense minister reveals the source of these agreements, that they are the only ones who had it only recently. They just had it. That it was not in handover notes, it was not in the Ministry of Finance, not in the Ministry of Defense. It's the benevolence of the Americans. So the Americans gave it to him. He was boasting in parliament. So at least we now know the source. And then the president is complaining about leakages. So let's take it for the sake of argument that somebody deliberately leaked this to the media. So one leak, as against how many leaks? So who is the leaker in chief? Who is the leaker in chief in this affair, in this whole Ghana-US military agreement? So 5 leaks to 1, and the leaks continue. So Sam, consistency, logic, sincerity, lacking in the president's address. Then the president also did something that I found very, 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 very cheap. Trying to divide this country into who is pro-America and who is anti-America. That those who are raising concerns are fanning anti-American sentiments. Jesus Christ. Has the president forgotten that on the 16th of December 1958, our National Assembly, the parliament of our country, overwhelmingly, all sides, nobody voting even in abstention, that our foreign policy will be positive neutrality and non-alignment. That has always been the guiding principle. Our foreign policy, Sam, is positive neutrality and non-alignment. And as President Nkrumah put it when he addressed the National Assembly that day, we do not want to get entangled in the ideological battles of the great powers of this world. Never in the history of our country has a president attempted to sought to divide the people he leads. Look, son, I have said time without number that if this agreement had been brought to us from the Russians, I will have the same concerns that I have. If it had come from the Chinese, from the Italians, from the French, from the British, from Nigeria, Togo, wherever, the opposition to articles in this agreement is a matter of principle. Sovereignty is fundamental. It's a matter of principle. So, where from this business about anti-American sentiments? Where from that? And has the president forgotten so soon? Some. I have here some extracts. This is City FM Online on 16 January 2016. Under the caption, Nana Akufo-Addo will have rejected ex-Gitmo detainees, Nana Akomia. Communications Director of the New Patriotic Party, Nana Akomia, says the party's flag bearer, Nana Akufo-Addo, will have turned down a request by the United States government for Ghana to host 2 former detainees of Guantanamo Bay in the country if he were in power. According to Akomia, former President Kufuor would have also done same in the same position. He insisted, do you think that the NPP will issue a statement if the flag bearer disagrees with it? It's not going to happen. How can the party issue a statement that he doesn't agree with? We will not issue a statement that he is against it. He may still speak, but essentially what the party has said is what he stands for. Unquote. So, at the time that President Akufo-Addo and the New Patriotic Party was opposing the Gitmo 2 decision, were they anti-American? So when did they fall in love with America? The U.S. ambassador himself, April 15, 2016, there was an interview here, which is also on City FM Online, under the caption, Nana Addo had reservations about Gitmo 2. And the U.S. ambassador, Ambassador Jackson, said, quote, Akufo-Addo was consulted during the Gitmo 2 negotiations. And since I didn't consult him, I don't want to mischaracterize his response. But we did both seek to inform and to solicit his views. He had reservations. He had very definite reservations, unquote. So when President Akufo, then candidate Akufo-Addo, was reached out to by the Americans, and here again you see the difference in leadership style. On the instruction of President Mahama during the Gitmo 2 negotiations, President Mahama said that, look, there's an election on the horizon. This Gitmo 2 will transcend the 2016 election. So reach out to the opposition leader. That's what great leaders do. Leaders who remember always that they are president of a nation and not of a political party or one side or just a section of society. But we didn't see President Akufo-Addo do that. He didn't reach out to anybody. So when the U.S. ambassador reveals in this interview on April 15, 2016, available online and listeners can Google, and he had definite reservations, as the U.S. ambassador put it, does that mean that President Akufo-Addo was anti-American? So then there is another one. Let me read this. 16 January 2016, under the caption, Return ex-Gitmo detainees, Akufo-Addo, Star FM Online. Oh. The spokesperson for the New Patriotic Party, flag bearer, has revealed that Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo wants government to return the ex-Guantanamo Bay detainees. According to Mustafa Hamid, the former foreign minister finds the entire process used by the Mahama-led administration to accept the suspected terrorists flawed. Nana Addo thinks the process is flawed and was wrong for government to accept them, unquote. Were these anti-American sentiments? When did they come to love America? And then this talk about hypocrisy. This is not hypocrisy. So you see, the president lost an opportunity to unite this country, to bring people together, to lower the temperature. The political temperature on this is too much. And I have said that, look, the way we are going in this whole debate, we are even compromising our security. I was talking about leaks a while ago, because government is on an overdrive. It has now become a propaganda warfare. Every day, they are leaking defense agreements with locations, venues where temporal security arrangements take place. Temporal. Because we have said what we are opposed to is a permanent presence, which if you read Article 2 of the current agreement, you read Article 5.1 of the current agreement, you read Article 19 of this agreement, all intents and purposes. You read the preamble to this agreement. It talks about being an enhanced agreement. We are clear in our minds that this talks about a permanent presence, talking about residential facilities and all of that. Now, Sam, you have a situation where virtually every day security documents are being leaked. Other countries pay so much to spies, agents, to even get them information. But in the case of Ghana, because of this debate and because of how leadership has been jettisoned and we are being very irresponsible about this debate, we are compromising our national security, making our country more vulnerable in a propaganda overdrive which is not working. The more you do that, the more you annoy Ghanaians. Then the president also did something which I found very, very strange. The president sought to compare this defense cooperation agreement to IMF staff in Accra, World Bank staff in Accra, embassy staff in Accra, and that the IMF, World Bank have been with us and the Vienna Convention, and they have served our country well. Unbelievable, son. Unbelievable. President Akufo-Addo was foreign minister. He was Attorney General. He is respected by many when he held these positions. But because of political propaganda, to compare this agreement to agreement covering IMF staff, World Bank staff in Accra, unbelievable. Then in one breath, he even compared the agreement to United Nations peacekeeping. Unbelievable. Meanwhile, if you read this agreement doesn't mince words in stating that this agreement does not recognize international law. It does not recognize national law. When this agreement was entered into, they themselves, look at Article 18 of this agreement. It says, any dispute regarding the application, implementation, or interpretation of this agreement or its implementing arrangement shall be resolved at the lowest level possible and as necessary elevated to the executive agent for consideration and resolution. Those disputes that cannot be resolved by the executive agent shall refer to the parties for consultation and resolution as appropriate and shall not be referred to any national or international court, tribunal, or similar body, or to any third party for settlement. Shall not. International law is ousted. National law is ousted. And the president is telling us about international laws that cover World Bank staff, IMF staff. This creature is a particularly unique creature, this agreement we are discussing. Look at Article 15 of this agreement, under claims. Article 52, it says claims by third parties for damages or losses caused by military personnel and civilian personnel shall be resolved by the United States government in accordance with United States laws and regulations. So only United States law applies. And you know the worrying thing, Sam? Government communicators have been speaking as though Ghanaian law is the same as US law, as if our criminal code is the same. There are some crimes you can commit in Ghana, including homosexuality, some. And if the president says that governments don't change anything, especially when it is a non-commercial. He fails to tell Ghanaians that he spoke to President Trump and they agreed that they will start a new enhanced agreement. He fails to tell Ghanaians that on the 7th and 8th of 7 and 8 August of 2017, this agreement was negotiated. He fails to tell Ghanaians that if you read Article 19.3 of the agreement, it reads, and I quote, "This agreement, upon its entry into force, shall supersede the agreement between the United States and Ghana regarding the status of United States military and civilian employees of the United States Department of Defense temporarily present in Ghana in connection with the African Crisis Response Initiative and other activities effected by an exchange of notes at Accra dated November 24, 1997 and February 24, 1998 and entered into force February 24, 1998, and the agreement regarding the status of U.S. military and civilian personnel of the U.S. Department of Defense temporarily present in Ghana in connection with humanitarian relief operations in Southern Africa effected by an exchange of notes at Accra March 22 and April 7, 2000 and entered into force April 7, 2000, unquote. So Article 19.3, this current agreement supersedes all previous agreements, which were temporal agreements, as your own agreement states. But you know, what even further exposes that Minister for Foreign Affairs, they came to brief Parliament following our insistence, because the 2-year agreement had lapsed. You insisted during the campaign that you would take them back. When they came to Parliament, what did they tell the people of Ghana? They told us that they have just discovered that apparently President Mahama gave the people, the Gitmo to a refugee status. And so their hands are what the Americans did. Gitmo 2 is not a commercial agreement. The president's own conduct, his record on the Gitmo 2, what his ministers told Parliament, is that they wanted to take the Gitmo 2 back. They were looking for another country, a third country, to take them because there's war in Yemen and they don't want to go back to Yemen and all. They think that there will be humanitarian consequences. The same humanitarian reasons for which President Mahama accepted the 2. This is not a commercial agreement, and yet you are willing to depart so that at least you can try and save your face because of your campaign rhetoric. And then you come and tell us that it has always been the case that in international agreements of this nature, governments, it's not been partisan, and governments have continued what they came to meet. Clearly, the president not being sincere.
Right.
But some, and I'll need some more time, please. I beg you. This is a very important matter. Some, you heard the president say that all the brouhaha around this matter has been as a result of a cynical manipulation by reckless self-seekers. And they are as a result of his opponents, his political opponents, who are fomenting trouble. Clearly, our president has lost touch. I know you are active on social media. Samuel Atta-Mensah of CTF, the chief executive officer, who wrote an article and said that, and put out a tweet. And you remember in the 2016 campaign, he declared for Nana Akufo-Addo and did some communication even for them, went on TV and radio stations, appeared to be part of their communication team. is when the SAMMYs become a political opponent of President Akufo-Addo. Professor Akila Basoya, is he a politician? Dr. Kobi Mensah, Professor Kweku Asare, and others, all of those who have written articles, who have been speaking on these matters, are they politicians? What the president did was to just insult, was to just reduce this whole matter to a partisan affair. And it is not a partisan matter. It is not about trading insults. There are people who are genuinely concerned, who are raising issues to do with sovereignty, issues to do with national security. I mean, talk to the rank and file in the Ghana Armed Forces. Do you know that if you read portions of this agreement, Article 5, Article 8, after the Americans have come to establish their base, their facilities and all, if you look at the annexes, it's Ghanaian soldiers who are supposed to go and protect them. That obligation is on the Ghana Armed Forces to protect the facilities.
Without entering.
They cannot enter, they cannot inspect what will be brought into the facilities. But they are supposed to be there to protect. So you are there protecting, you don't know what is in there, what you are protecting. You are just a watchman who doesn't even have access. It's in this agreement. Talk to the rank and file of the Ghana Armed Forces. If a Ghanaian is injured, suffers damages in property, he has no remedy under this agreement. When we asked government officials that, okay, you are giving so much to American troops, even beyond the Vienna Convention, and I have read the Vienna Convention, it is not true that what the Americans and their contractors are getting is just what everybody gets under the Vienna Convention. It's not true. Especially when you are even contradicting yourself. You have said that this agreement is not under international law, and then you are quoting Vienna Convention. This agreement, there are special privileges and a special dispensation, special concessions that no international agreement has. The Vienna Convention doesn't have that. And then when we ask, so is it reciprocal? When our soldiers do go to America, you know what we were told? Only yesterday I was on Asempa FM with the Deputy Minister of Information, Nadokia, Deputy Minister in charge of security issues. She told me that, oh, there is a letter that our soldiers too will enjoy these things. A letter. And we are supposed to clap for them. The Americans have secured this in an agreement ratified by our parliament. Then ours is a letter. You know, the other day at the committee, when the Minister for Defense, if you read the committee's report, was asked about this military base, that all the experts that we have presented Article 2, Article 5.1 of this agreement to say that, look, this is how military bases are established. So when we said that, look, then if it is not a military base, can we be express? Can we state it expressly in the agreement? You know what the Minister of Defense told us at the committee? He said, oh, don't worry. I also had those concerns. So I wrote to the ambassador. And the ambassador sent me a letter. So I have a letter which says that we are not requesting a base and we are not interested in a base. So don't worry. A letter. I mean, can you imagine? This is how our leaders are negotiating for us. So that letter cannot be expressed in legal terms. What is the value of that letter? What's the value of that letter? Even this $20 million, which you shouldn't talk about when we are discussing sovereignty and national security. I mean, these are priceless. No country will sell its sovereignty for all the money in the world. No patriot will do that. But even that, let's take it that, we are poor people. The $20 million is not here. The defense minister says, oh, I have assurance. That's what he told Joy FM. I have assurance I will get $20 million. Then the U.S. ambassador to host a press conference. Oh, yes, you will get $20 million. but it's not in the agreement, nowhere. So you have our officials rely on word of mouth, letters. Meanwhile, you had an opportunity to have a consolidated agreement. You say that you want this agreement to be consolidated so that all matters can be covered. Unbelievable, son. Unbelievable. Meanwhile, articles in this agreement are nebulous, amorphous, very, very wide. They have a wide ambit, and experts have advised us when we have consulted that, look, you guys ought to be careful. So if you are being given these assurances, some verbal, some in letter, in a letter form, why can't it be incorporated in the agreement? Expressly stated. Our leaders say no. And that those who raise these concerns are just people who are reckless, who have questionable patriotic credentials. I mean, hey, we vote for our leader. Once you become president, you are president for all of us. You should be a father figure. Look, Sam, I have been politically active in the Fourth Republic. I'm not very old. I've seen many presidential addresses. I have never seen a presidential address of this nature. Never seen a presidential address that divides the nation, that attacks and insults people. Very insensitive. Very, 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 very incendiary. And now you are seeking to divide your citizens, who is pro-America, who is anti-America. Does President Akufo-Addo really think that if the Chinese bring this agreement, Ghanaians will accept it? Or if Russians bring this agreement, or if the Turks, or the French, or the Italians bring this agreement, he thinks that Ghanaians will accept this? And look at the people who are speaking. This morning, Sam, I saw a tweet from President Rawlings. And I want to spend a little time on this tweet. I think that is a very revealing tweet. President Rawlings writes, though the president's address was hard, it was important and timely to hear him and the American ambassador earlier affirm that there will be no military base established in Ghana. That was my major concern in my initial reaction to news of the agreement. The spirit of cooperation, be it military or diplomatic, has always been there. If there are details of the agreement that warrant a second look, such details should be examined to create comfort for all sides. Jerry John Rawlings. This is a very loaded tweet. Very, very loaded. For President Rawlings to say, to begin this tweet by saying, though the president's address was hard, the president is trying to be very diplomatic. And this is a president cover. He's longest serving president. He's had more presidential addresses than anybody. Probably he's had time for more presidential addresses. But I must say that reading our political history, President Nkrumah addressed the nation more. He had a dog broadcast, a regular dog broadcast, and all of that. But President Rawlings, longest serving president. And he says that the address was hard. You are our leader, democratic leader. Even Kim Jong-un, even dictators, they say they try to cut their people, their own people. They are not hard on their own people. It's President Rawlings speaking. He's being very diplomatic. You know that, when it comes to President Akufo-Addo, he's very diplomatic. And this is the diplomatic side of President Rawlings. He describes the speech as hard. You are supposed to come and soften matters. You come and deliver such a hard address. But President Rawlings says that, look, if there are details of the agreement that warrant a second look, such details should be examined to create comfort for all sides. So President Rawlings too has become what? A reckless, self-seeking hypocrite. He is anti-America. Genuine concerns are being raised. So, Sam, I am totally disappointed in my president. My president lost it. Our president lost it. He let us down. He embarrassed our country. And you see, this is a huge international matter that the international world, the international media is following. When the president of Ghana is coming to address this matter, a matter which has been on the front pages of the Washington Post, the demonstration in Ghana, it's on the front pages of the Washington Post in Washington, the New York Times, BBC, Al Jazeera, Reuters, they are all following your response. And this is how you come to talk down at your own people. Very condescending tone, in a very, very, very arrogant posture. So now, where do we go from here? I had thought that a presidential address would have come to settle matters. Now you have seen statements have been issued. The inter-party coalition, they say they are going to step up. They are going to hold regional demonstrations. You see, at the end of the day, we have to sit down and talk. And as President Rawlings has advised, address the concerns that Ghanaians have to bring comfort to all sides. I know that my senior comrade and friend, he takes a different view. He doesn't want even an agreement at all, you know, and he's entitled to that. I respect his view. But those of us who are saying that, in the spirit of diplomatic relations and cooperation, let us have a win-win situation.
All right, Honorable.
So finally, and I must make this point very, very firmly. We in the National Democratic Congress, we are not anti-Americans. We have nothing against the United States of America. Indeed, if you look at the history of foreign relations with the United States of America, 2 of the 3 presidents, US presidents, who have had high-level visits to Ghana were hosted by the NDC. We hosted President Bill Clinton, President Barack Obama. The NPP tradition has had only 1 visit in the 4th Republic, President Bush. We have had several corporations. The attempt by the president, and a very cheap attempt, to make it look as though those who are raising genuine concerns, and in speaking this morning, I have pointed at some of the genuine concerns we have about the several other things that are being said that are not in the agreement, assurances being given which are not in the agreement, the ousting of international laws, national laws, issues to do with our sovereignty, as Article 5.1, Article 2, the purpose and scope of this agreement. We have pointed to specifics. And we have said that if this agreement comes from any other country, it will be the same opposition. So where from this very cheap attempt by our president to portray some of us as people who are anti-America?
Right.
So, let it be stated that what the president has done, you know, he is the one who is clearly inviting a lot of maggots into this house.
Honorable, thank you very much for...
And I want to call on the president that it is not too late for him to get down his high horse, for him to be well advised, for him to stop polarizing the country and raising tensions, and to engage.
Okay.
Let us all sit around the table. That's my passionate advice to His Excellency the President.
Honorable.
Please let me conclude some passionate advice. Call all the former presidents, call the generals, the Chief of Defense Staff, minority leadership, all the political parties, with the Americans. Let this agreement be renegotiated, and let us have a win-win situation for everybody. I thank you, sir.
That brings us to 10:30. If you just join us, you are welcome to the show. The show is proudly brought to us by TT Brothers. They bring in the Ankoti Premium Malt, extra energy, extra vitality, non-alcoholic malt drink produced in Poland, and in all supermarkets. For more purchases, you can go to TT Brothers Limited at Nungwa Barrier, Makuja House on the Beach Road, or Uncle T House of the Tema Aflo Road, and you can call them on 0303304481 and 0501396377 or 0507396378. You can listen to us live on PAB-MC on Facebook, and then also on Radio Gold 905 FM on Facebook. Your thoughts, your views, very much welcome. On Twitter and Facebook, look for the handle at SAMMY ESHUN GH. Ambassador Sabiyari.
Well, good morning, Mr. ESHUN, colleague panelist. After listening to our ranking member of Foreign Affairs, you could see that I was sighing all the time because I was getting more afraid of the future of this country and what our generation, we are doing against future generations of this country. You remember that we were about to sell the Vodafone. Similar scenarios took place. It became an NPP NDC fight. In the end, one faction of the in Parliament boycotted it. We have lost Ghana Telecom. Similar scenario played up when we were dealing with Anglo Gold and Round Gold. You remember that episode also? So anytime we came up with dealing with national assets, giving out national assets, and even in this, giving out our national sovereignty, the same scenarios play out. And I fear for the future of the youth of this country. Sam, when this whole debate started, my prayer was that, for once, since this concerns our national sovereignty, let us avoid partisan discussions on this matter. But unfortunately, the introduction of this debate in itself was cocooned in political jargons and political discussions. So, in the event, what has happened is that all of us, or most of us, have lost the obligation to read the contents of the agreement properly as it should, so that we can advise the way it is. Comrade Kwesi Pratt, I listened to you yesterday, and I thank you for pointing out specifically what the consequences of this agreement will be on this country. And for me, what the consequences will be for the future of this country. Listeners, we were told that, this whole cooperation agreement started with the NDC, and therefore we are continuing. And for NDC to kick against it, they are hypocrites. So somebody said, can we then look at this purpose, terms and conditions? They are all very different. The 2015 agreement was more or less just a supply agreement by which Ghana government and the US government agrees that we will train mutually. You can come out to train, and you also come and train. And when you are coming, we can have to exchange cost. You give us similar value into whatever we are doing. So we have that agreement virtually on commercial basis. Virtually on commercial basis. And if you see who signed it, it was the US Air Force Brigadier General for Logistics who signed it for the US. So, the Americans don't do things the way other countries do. They calculate. People who were introducing this were scared of saying that this is a military base. This is an agreement for military base. Because, of course, they know what has happened in relation to military bases all over the world. They know. They know the permanent nature of such bases. They know the infringement of sovereignty and people's rights. You understand? Just as Honorable Abraka was saying, the impact of one of the concerns is that if an American soldier hits you on the road, you understand, you cannot take that American soldier to court to claim any liability. If an American drone accidentally drops a bomb on my family house at New Amanford, my family has no redress nowhere, because I cannot take it to any high court in Accra. I cannot take it to any Supreme Court in Ghana. These are some of the implications. But Mr. Shen, I read something and I wasn't too sure, because I was reading from the internet about the contents of the agreement, and knowing that this is an era of fake news, I decided that I would want to see the hard copy before I can make this contribution that I'm making. But before then, Mr. Shen, we need to divide this agreement into its various components to see what we are doing to ourselves, so that we don't lump them and say it's a military cooperation and that's the end of it. It is not just a military cooperation. It is an agreement. If you look at the memorandum covering it, one is a defense cooperation, which defense cooperation have existed in many African world order now, because the United Nations is to believe that international peace can be attained by international cooperation, including defense cooperation. Okay. The second aspect of the agreement is the status of the United States forces, who they become when they come to Ghana. The third component of access to the use of agreed facilities. So the government then can decide that, okay, U.S. forces have given you access to the Electoral Commission. Are you there? I have given you access to a facility because it's an agreed facility. And then the fourth aspect is that areas in the Republic of Ghana. Areas. So these are the four components of the agreement, which I thought government communicators and the president, when they had the opportunity, would have explained for us to know whether we support or we don't support this agreement. Mr. Shen, if you read the agreement in terms of scope properly, you will see that Mr. President listen to the voice of Ghanaians and do something about this agreement. Fortunately, you have to give a presidential assent before it becomes a law. I want to beg the president to move from the posture as contained in the address, because Honorable Okajato have really addressed that. But what I see most dangerous of this in this agreement is contained in Article 2. And with your permission, I want to read. This agreement set forth a framework for enhanced partnership and security cooperation between the parties with the aims of strengthening the defense relationship further and addressing shared security challenges in the region, including those relating to protection of government personnel and facilities. This whole agreement by scope begins with protection of government personnel. So in an election year, the government decides that I have given you the Electoral Commission as an agreed facility to monitor. And I've also given you the right, the obligation to protect government personnel. What happens to the rest of Ghanaians who are not government personnel? Mr. Shen, this is the nature of the agreement that has gone through our parliament, our cabinet, passed through parliament in a very dangerous manner. And this agreement we are supposed to be holding on ourselves. You have access, unimpeded access to agreed areas. And I've told you that the agreed areas can be airport, the agreed areas can be Tema Harbor, the agreed areas can be electoral commission. Are you following what I'm saying? And those of us who are anxious because of what has happened in other countries relating to military bases, we need to ask for caution. We need to ask for caution. Should this clause that says that the Americans are here to protect government personnel and facilities be retained in our clause? So what about if there's an election? Before the swearing of the president, then PP has lost election, and they call the Americans to protect government officials. What will happen? Mr. Shah, you saw that in the recent demonstration. Photographs were taken of two young men. For me, as soon as I saw their beard, I said, this cannot be Ghana police people. Are you following me? And the speculation is that they are members of the vigilantes, whatever it is, invisible forces, with a gun that is very alien to the Ghana police. And we all know the history of how these people were trained. Now you are bringing the Americans. Last time I heard, if it's true, I read news only from the social media, that the IGP itself was going to include members of the invisible forces for the night patrols. So in a way, we are gradually incorporating clandestinely these forces into our regular institutions and structures. The training that these Americans are supposed to be given, would it be extended to the armed wing of the MPP? Would the training be extended to the armed wing of the NPP? So that in an election year, when the president declares that the Electoral Commission and all its facilities are areas granted to the American for protection, including government officials, what will happen in this country? Now, Mr. Shen, the other issue we have to be concerned about is the semblance of diplomatic immunity that has been given to these people. And if you read the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Immunity, it is given to specific appointed state personalities, and for them not to be impeded in their work, for them not to be, chased with the laws of the host country, they are given some immunity. But then even then, when you misconduct yourself and offend the criminal law of the country, you can be deported and dealt with. We have the American embassy housing the highest number of such diplomats. Housing the highest number of diplomats. Are we saying that by the numerous of thousands of naval personnel, the Air Force personnel, the Army personnel that will be coming, the contractors that will be coming, should all be given diplomatic immunities? If they are going to be engaged in helping us with our defense, have you seen any Ghanaian soldier cut on the market, beating anybody randomly, or causing any trouble? So, have we given our own Ghana Armed Forces any immunity, the nature of diplomatic immunity? If we have not, why are we giving Americans that kind of immunity to come and do what? And if they do anything that hurts an individual Ghanaian, that Ghanaian cannot talk. Is that not ceding of our individual rights as citizens of this country? Mr. Shen, we are going through worrying times, and I am just pleading to our generation of Ghanaian politicians, to think about the future and the youth of this country. We should think about the youth of this country. Because anywhere in this world where these bases, military bases have been, there have been massive resistance. Many. And in Germany, the social aspect of it is that in all over the world, we have fatherless American children. In all over the world. Of course, women have been impregnated, the man has to live 2 years, and the children have become fatherless. And it's a huge problem in other countries. See how Libya lost Gaddafi. See how Saddam Hussein was murdered. So if the American government does not agree with your policy of containment, what will happen is what? I will say the same thing if the Chinese or Afghanistans or whatever are coming to do this in our country. So, Mr. President, with all humility, the American ambassador is here to do his job. I'm happy he has told you that you are the most visionary leader we have had in our times. But the vision of this country, Mr. President, sir, does not include the fact that whereas our own radio stations are being compelled, to pay for license for the airwaves, communication and everything, some foreign entities can come and have free access to our spectrum, radio spectrum. We don't accept that as our vision. Mr. President, we don't accept that some people who have unimpeded assets, now Ghana's aviation industry is picking up a little. It is giving us a lot of money. We have only one airport. Do you have two now or one? One. You have one major runway. Yeah. And this runway is now to be constructed at our cost. At our cost too. To suit American specification. Because they are using this giant aircraft. And then when there's an American aircraft coming, maybe by the agreement, it must have precedence of landing over all other commercial aircraft. What are we doing to our aviation industry? President, I don't mind if you would include me as one of the hypocrites. But I want to tell you, Mr. President, that this agreement does not sit with me and many other Ghanaians. Mr. President, I want to tell you that I'm not anti-American. But any agreement that ousts my court, I disagree. See, we are entering into this military cooperation agreement. Mr. Sen, our military infrastructure is that we follow the United Nations, we follow the AU, and we follow ECOWAS. Not so in the deployment of military for international peacekeeping and other things. Are we abandoning our role in the ECOWAS now that we have an American base or whatever here in Ghana to cooperate with us in what? Are we abandoning our role in the ECOWAS? Mr. President, this agreement needs further explanation rather than you insulting me. See, I don't want us to be boring our listeners, but I would urge every Ghanaian, irrespective whether you are MPP or NDC, whether you are an academic or whatever, to take a critical look at the various agreements, and you will come to the conclusion that, one, there was a lot of falsehoods in the preamble that accompanied the agreement we are talking about. The falsehood is that, we have a logistic agreement with them, and that one has expired, and that is the reason why we should bring a new one. That is a falsehood. The agreement of 2015 signed by Hannah Estete is that when anybody wants an amendment in the new amendment in the agreement, or when any of the parties want a change, you know what they have to do? They would have to give 18 months notice that, oh, we want to continue the agreement or we want to abrogate it. That is what the first agreement said. Has it got the same conditions in the new agreement? No. How can defense cooperation agreement, status of American forces, access to facilities and areas be said to be replacing or continuing a logistics agreement? Or is it the story of the desert camel? You know, desert camel. Oh, I'm cold. Can I put my nose? Then you put your nose. By the end of the day, he has removed the owner of the house. Is that the camel story? Mr. President, this agreement is dangerous to the extent that Ghanaians don't understand what you mean and what your vision is. Indeed, when you went to America and told the President of America that you will help him fight terrorism, I mean, you know, many Ghanaians laughed because, how can you, Ghana, help America fight terrorism? It was like Buhari saying that he was going to help Ghana fight corruption. Little did we know that this is the kind of agreement you are signing and for which the U.S. ambassador called you a visionary leader. Mr. President, this is a negative vision. This is a negative vision. It's negative to the extent that your countrymen do not understand. The fact that you alluded to, that you were a transparent president, and that is why you sent this thing to Parliament. It's wrong. It's false. And with the greatest respect, disingenuous. Because if you read the agreement, the agreement document itself, it was calling for ratification by Parliament. So apart from the Getmutu decision of the Supreme Court, which now makes it obligatory for all such agreements to go to Parliament, you yourself was following Article 73 of the Constitution, which says that any international agreement should have ratification by Parliament. So if you follow the Constitution and send the agreement to Parliament for ratification, what is your transparency in it? What is it? Where is it coming from? And being this nature of agreement, I would have expected that when the opposition started making their claims, and to the extent that they boycotted Parliament, you should have called the Speaker of Parliament and told him, no, this agreement needs the consensus of all Ghanaians. Because it's our sovereignty, it's our airspace together. I have not given tax exemption to my fellow Ghanaians when they import anything. Now you know the problem the importers are facing in this country. Always on the net, talking about importation duties. If I bring a car, Mr. Sen, one small car, I have to pay duties. If an American brings an armor car, no duty. No duty. If Radio Gold or Muntie cannot pay its annual license, they will be sanctioned. America can come and establish any equipment with spectrum and take over airspace. Nothing will happen. Mr. President, this is not our vision. This is not how we wanted you to rule us as a country. Of course, I agree with my Honorable Sam that when he wrote to the President, provoking him to come and address the nation on this matter, I was expecting the President to come and say, oh, my people, I'm a listening president. I've heard your cries. I will set up an inter-party, non-partisan, or I'll call experts to come and advise properly on this matter. Now, you don't add to the already divided Parliament House. You understand? By siding with your political party because they are no majority, and then just reach this agreement through. Mr. President, this is not fair. This is not fair. Many people have believed in you, Mr. President, because you have been a crusader for human rights all this time. Mr. President, people voted for you because they trusted that you would defend our sovereignty. We voted for you because we believe that you will put Ghana first. Nana Akufo-Addo, people voted for you because you said that you believe in Ghana. You put it on billboards and banners. You believe in Ghana. So why are you now insulting Ghanaians who are against this position you are taking? Mr. President, what have you been able to do? You have virtually divided this country into hypocrites and sycophants. And those who are singing and praising you, you agree and accept. But those who express dissenting views are hypocrites. Does a president have the right to use these words on his citizens? Mr. President, how are you ruling over a country of about 43% of hypocrites, and you don't design programs to bring us all together? How do you want to assess you as a president who is what? Managing a country made up or containing 43 or 44% of hypocrites? Because they don't agree with your policy. Mr. President, don't forget that only about 2 years ago, that was your own clarion call. I don't agree to this. I don't do that. If it is me, I won't do it. If it is me, I won't do it. Now you have this. We have the mandate. You are doing worse. John Dramani Mahama accepted international obligations and said, hey, these two people, according to our assessment, do not pose any threat to our country. Let them come. As I speak to you, Kwesi, I think I'm right. Kwesi, this matter is still before the court. The Gitmo 2, it's been decided. Okay. Do you remember the plaintiffs in those cases who took the Gitmo 2 matter to court? It includes Nano Ubel. You understand? So, if in what have a stake in the future of this country, but please, think about the teeming youth who voted for you, youth of Ghana, who have not done anything in this matter and who are going to suffer in future. See, now we are into bonds, isn't it? Into bonds. Bonds mature in 25 years. When I'm gone, 25 years, when most of us are gone, it is the youth of this country who are going to pay those monies we are taking. And if we are taking those bonds and building their future, I would have been happier. I would have been happier to see in this agreement that because we are establishing this one, every Ghanaian youth should have or be able to travel to America to study free. I would have been happy. Then we know that the president is thinking about the future of his youth. I would have been happier if by signing this agreement, the president would have asked America to stop any deportation against Ghanaians. That means that we are losing some and we are going to win some. Nothing of this nature is happening. In the midst of all this, the American ambassador says, hey, this as from this date, every diplomat, a former ambassador, former government, and even the president would have to come and queue for his visa. Aguru Bosa Ofia Ashasi. Aguru Bosa Ofia Ashasi. One bay impono, no bay. One bay impo only no bay. To the extent that this agreement does not consider the interest of the youth of this country and their future, I am against this agreement. To the extent that the youth of this country would have to pay the price for this agreement, I'm against it. So, the youth of this country must be listened to. Our generation is becoming a generation of failure for our country. We sold all our national assets on which our youth are going to depend. We sold it all. Obwasi gold, diamonds, we have sold it all. Now we are selling their sovereignty, and this is not acceptable. Thank you, ESHUN.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Sampiale, for your submission on the show this morning. Yours is also very much welcome You can send it to me on WhatsApp, on Facebook, sorry, and then on Twitter. You simply have to look for the handle at SAMMY. Send those comments through. I've seen lots of them. I'll read them. We're also live on the wall of PAB-MC GH on Facebook, and also live on the wall of Radio Gold 905 FM. And you can watch us live at www.pabmcghnews.com. It's live on that website, so you can follow us live and send your comments through. I'll come straight to Mr. Pratt. Mr. Pratt, morning.
Good morning, my brother. I was hoping to hear some of the comments that our listeners would make, but hopefully I'll leave you sufficient time to do that.
That's right.
Because I intend to be as brief as possible. Now, when I heard that our President, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, was going to speak to the nation on this agreement, I assumed that he was going to answer some of the very nagging questions which have been raised, and that at the end of his speech, at least we would all understand why his government decided to sign such an agreement, which is obviously in extremely bad taste. At the end of this address, none of the questions have been answered. At the end of this address, all that had been done was to insult those who have raised issues with this agreement. At the end of the address, all that the President succeeded in doing was simply to say that one, it has been done before, so we must do it again. It was to say that his party and government are indeed no different from the NDC and its government. All that the President said at the end of his statement was that disagreeing with America is an unpatriotic act, and so on. Now, I've taken the trouble to look at some of the reservations and concerns which have been raised by this agreement, and indeed how this agreement has been forcibly pushed down the throats of Ghanaians. And I note that there are many people in this government, that is the government of His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, and also many people who are not members of the National Democratic Congress, who feel very uncomfortable about the agreement itself, its tenor, and how it was rushed through Parliament. This morning, I've read Daily Guide, and I've read an article which is authored by one of Ghana's most distinguished journalists. Indeed, I do not always agree with Mr. Cameron Dodo, and I've had my disagreements with Mr. Cameron Dodo on many issues before. But that does not take away the fact that he's considered as one of Ghana's most distinguished journalists. And he writes on page 9 of the Daily Guide today, and I'll read excerpts, in an article titled, "Much Ado About Nothing." And this is what Mr. Kamondodo writes. He says, "But the NDC's hypocrisy does not mean that the government quite comes out of the affair smelling of roses. The way and manner the agreement was taken to Parliament for ratification was totally inept and gave the minority a totally unexpected weapon to whip the government with." A few paragraphs down the line, he writes, "First of all, the MPP ministers, who should have been primarily seized on the agreement, the Ministers of Defense, of Foreign Affairs, the Interior and National Security appear not to have been too well briefed on Ghana's past relationship with the U.S., especially on military matters. Mr. Kamondodu also writes, on this particular agreement with the U.S., it should have been realized that if you mention the word runway in a military agreement, some minds would automatically associate it with a military base, and it is only someone who lives on Mars who would not be aware that the term U.S. military base constitutes political dynamite from Okinawa to Taiwan, to the Azores, to Djibouti, to Ascension Islands. Bases equal demonstrations and marches might quite as easily be taken as an Einstein Eureka moment as the mass energy thing itself. He continues, so the next time the Ghana cabinet finds a parliamentary hot potato in one of its folders, it should develop a practical strategy for presenting it. Its own members of parliament should come first. Any concerns that they might express should be addressed. Listen to this very carefully. Mr. Kamondodu says that members of parliament of the MPP, their concerns should have been addressed. And then he says, then the hot potato must be presented to selected communicators as deep background on non-attributable basis. So by the time it reaches the floor of parliament, all the naughty sticky points would have been extruded. I don't know, maybe it's a typographical error, I'm not sure. And as it were, disarmed. U.S. intelligence would, of course, be apprised of these maneuvers, and before the cabinet knew it, the U.S. itself might suggest improvements to the original wording of the draft agreement. I saw the signature of one logistics director of the U.S. Army on one of the agreements. How could the political dynamite of that type be left to the military? This is Kamondodu. Anyway, to wait and then scurry to find explanations after Joy FM had published a leaked version of the agreement was extremely amateurish. Kamondodu says that the manner in which this thing was done was extremely amateurish. And he continued. Today, the Minister of Defense would say A, the next day he would say he had just discovered B. He says, so of course, the NDC's open fire with all guns blazing. Koku Anidohu, the Don Quixote of Ghana politics, actually utters the unmentionable words, coup d'etat, and an instant matter is crafted. Treason, treasonable felony. Are we back in the bad old days of conspiracy to conspire? And then he ends with these words. Very, very interesting words. This is Kamondodu, this is not me. We must never again make such an almighty fools of ourselves. Kamondodu says, we must never again make such an almighty fools of ourselves. Let me put Mr. Kamondodu aside in the meantime. You know, I listened also to the Minister of Information, Honorable Dr. Mustafa Hamid. And Dr. Mustafa Hamid told us in plain language that the Minister of Defense made mistakes in the presentation of the agreement to Parliament for ratification. I'm not the one saying it all. The Minister of Information, the government chief communicator, says that the Minister of Defense made mistakes in the presentation of the agreement to Parliament. What are these mistakes? What are the mistakes that the Minister of Defense made? We will find out one day. I also listened to perhaps one of the most brilliant and articulate communicators of the New Patriotic Party, a medical officer, now parliamentarian, called Dr. Okoboy. And he said that, look, their worry has to do with how the NDC treated the agreement. And that if the NDC had not taken such an antagonistic posture, it would have been possible for all the sides to sit down and take out sections of the agreement which clearly were problematic. I'm not the one saying it all. An MPP member of parliament. Now let us assume that the NDC was belligerent. Let us assume that the NDC was aggressive and so on. Does that justify passing an agreement that you know is problematic? Would that justify passing an agreement that you know is problematic? And so, and you see, I can go on and on and on. I mean, this morning, you take the Daily Guide. You take the Daily Guide of this morning. And the front page lead story of the Daily Guide is Nana stokes fire over U.S. military deal. The Daily Graphic, Mr. Daily Graphic, the Daily Guide's understanding of the effect of the presidential speech is that it stokes fire. That's a million words that the president's speech stokes fire. Now I want to spend a little time on some of the claims of the president. You know, the president tells us that when it comes to foreign relations, when concessions and so on have been given to other governments, new governments must be bound by them or are bound by them. And that is Ghana's tradition, Ghana's foreign policy tradition. Brother, it is not true. You know, after the 1966 coup, February 24, 1966, to actually 1969, through to January 13th, 1972, the National Liberation Council and the Progress Party government headed by Dr. Kofi Abirifa-Busia decided to undo every foreign policy decision that the Nkrumah government did. First and foremost, Fighters for African Liberation, the ANC's armed wing, SWAPO's armed wing, MPLA fighters and so on, who were in Ghana at the invitation of the Ghanaian government and who were being assisted to overthrow colonialism and apartheid, were arrested and deported. The Progress Party government and the National Liberation government did not continue with Nkrumah's foreign policy. And indeed, concessions which have been given to countries and so on were trampled under the feet of the new administrations. Why? We had a military defense cooperation agreement with the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. They threw it through the window. In fact, there were Russian or Soviet soldiers at Asukari and other places. All of them were sent home. They maltreated Chinese military advisors who were in the country and so on. So it cannot be true that for all time, as our foreign policy position, we do not change this agreement. It is not true. Indeed, when General Champon came to power, at the time that General Champon came to power, the Busia's government's foreign policy was that we should not impose sanctions on apartheid South Africa. Busia's government's stated foreign policy was that we should be friends with the apartheid South Africa, and that through our friendship with apartheid South Africa, we'll be able to persuade them to change the policy of apartheid. General Champon threw that policy through the window and insisted that Ghana should join countries which wanted to impose sanctions on apartheid South Africa, and so on. So there are various foreign policy issues that change with governments. There are various foreign policy options that change with government. And there are various concessions and so on that are given to other countries and so on, which change when new governments assume power. In any case, I'm finding it exceedingly difficult to believe that you can have a government in place which says that if there are any things which are inimical to the interest of Ghana, we should accept them simply because its predecessor government accepted them. And that the only things we can change are commercial agreements. It is not only commercial agreements which can be detrimental to the national interest. All kinds of agreements can have a detrimental effect on the national interest. And I do not see why we can decide that when it comes to military agreements, political agreements, diplomatic agreements, and so on, even if they are inimical to the interest of Ghana, we should keep them simply because the predecessor government kept them. I mean, I have a huge problem with that. Now, there's something which is also very significant, which is emerging. And I do hope that we all see it for what it is. You know, in the last elections, it was clear that Mr. Rawlings preferred the New Patriotic Party to the National Democratic Congress. Indeed, I was shocked to the marrow when presidential candidate Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo declared publicly that Mr. Rawlings has always been his hero, and that he has always looked up to Mr. Rawlings, and that he has been inspired in his political career by the philosophy of Mr. Rawlings and so on. I mean, I've known Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo for a while, and when he said those things, I was beginning to wonder what was wrong with me. You understand? But all that is beginning to unravel. Now, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo is saying that Mr. Rawlings, who is his political inspiration, Mr. Rawlings, who he admires so, during his tenure, was not promoting transparency. That he signed an agreement in 1998 which was hidden from the people of Ghana, which was not transparent enough, and that his government wants to do something which is better than what the Rawlings administration did, and that his government wants to do something which will better protect the interests of the people of Ghana than what Mr. Rawlings did. This is a very interesting development. You understand? So Mr. Rawlings is no longer Nana Akufo-Addo's political mentor. Nana Akufo-Addo is beginning to see that Mr. Rawlings did many things which were wrong when it came to dealing with the U.S. on this military cooperation agreement. At least Mr. Rawlings was not transparent. He hid the agreement from the people of Ghana, and that he is doing much, much better. Now, it is interesting that Mr. Rawlings has also waded into this controversy and said that, look, Ghanaians may love Americans, but they cannot countenance the establishment of a U.S. military base in Ghana. This morning, I've read his tweet, which says that, look, there may be some things wrong with this agreement, and that it is time to renegotiate them and so on. Things are beginning to unravel, and it is difficult to tell where they will end, but it is interesting. It's interesting also to couple all of these developments with the fact that indeed over the last few weeks, when this disagreement has raged and so on, key elements of the New Patriotic Party have been taking pot shots at Mr. Rawlings. In fact, I've heard key members of this party publicly state that Mr. Rawlings is corrupt. And so, what is happening? Perhaps this may be the good side of this agreement and the controversy surrounding it. The chickens will certainly come home to roost. And indeed, we shall begin to know the genuineness of all the political talk that people have engaged in over the last couple of years and so. Now, you know, we are told by His Excellency President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo that what the agreement they have entered into with the United States of America is not for the establishment of a U.S. military base in Ghana. That is what we are told. Indeed, according to the president, what the U.S. is going to have in Ghana is a facility. My goodness, who said that a military base is not a facility? A military base is certainly a facility. But we are told that don't worry, don't call it a military base. It is simply just a facility. And so on. Now you have entered into an agreement to give to the United States of America space, facilities, access to the airport and so on, which enables the United States of America to bring in military equipment, to bring in soldiers of an undisclosed number to station in your country, to use your country as a training base, and to use your country as a staging post to launch military operations in the sub-region. And then you turn around to tell us that it is not a military base. So if this is not a military base, what is a military base? In any case, on the 20th of March, the Embassy of the United States of America actually issued a statement. And the statement is headed, Statement on Status of Forces Agreement. Paragraph 4 of that statement, which was issued by the U.S. Embassy, not me, not the Ghana government, states, the United States and Ghana are planning joint security exercises in 2018. Listen very carefully. Which require access to Ghanaian bases by U.S. participants and those from other nations when included. So the U.S. Embassy is saying that what they want are bases. I'm not the one saying it. This is the U.S. Embassy statement, paragraph 4, statement of March 20th, 2018. In any case, we have said, we have agreed in the agreement that whatever we give to the United States of America, they have a right to break them down, to reconstruct them, to modify them to suit American standards. What does that mean? You know, my brother, my biggest problem with this agreement is a very, very simple one. All of us know that the United States of America is one of the world's major nuclear powers. All of us know that the United States of America has nuclear weapons. It has biological weapons and has one of the largest stockpiles of chemical weapons in the world. So if you sign an agreement with the United States of America which simply says that you can bring any weapons you like into my country for the purposes of training and carrying out military operations, what you are saying technically is that the U.S. is allowed, because there's no restriction on the type of weapons the U.S. can bring into our country. So you are saying that the U.S. is allowed to station biological, chemical, and nuclear weapons on our territory. Can you think about the consequences of this? Now, is the president telling us that opposing this is unpatriotic? Opposing the sighting of biological, chemical, and nuclear weapons on our soil is unpatriotic. Who can say that? Unbelievable. Now, you see, we are being told that if you don't agree with proposals of the United States government, the Donald Trump government proposals, then you are anti-American, and at the same time, you are unpatriotic. Let's just examine this for a moment. As we speak, Bernie Sanders, a presidential candidate or aspirant in the American elections, is opposed to the policies of Donald Trump, even opposes budgetary allocations made by Donald Trump, and has been one of the most critical voices when it comes to U.S. militarism around the world. Barack Obama, former president of the United States of America, has publicly stated his opposition to policies of Donald Trump regarding military deployment and so on. Hillary Clinton, former Secretary of State, has done the same. I mean, hundreds and thousands, Yeshitela and so on, all of them have been opposed to U.S. policies and so on. Now, by the description of our president, by the definition of our president, today Barack Obama will become anti-American. How is that possible? What are we doing in Ghana that even Republican congressmen have not done? What are we doing in Ghana that Democratic congressmen have not done? What are we doing in Ghana that former U.S. presidents have not done? Does that make us anti-American and so on? In any case, is it better to be anti-Ghanaian than to be anti-American? If we are going to accept the president's definition, for us as people of Ghana, is it better to be anti-Ghanaian or anti-American? All that everybody is doing is emphasizing the fact that the collective interest of the people of Ghana should be taken into account in reaching the agreement and in ratifying the agreement. Period. You know, when I read this agreement, I was exceedingly sad. There was a portion of the agreement, I think Article 18 of the agreement, states very, very clearly that if there's any dispute between us and the United States of America, no tribunal or court anywhere in the world can hear that dispute unless there's mutual agreement of the parties. And yesterday I was discussing this matter somewhere with one of my NPP friends. I said, oh, the key word is mutual agreement. I mean, what does mutual agreement mean? Where there are two parties involved, mutual agreement says that you cannot go ahead without the consent of the other party. So, in stricto sensu, what it means is that if the U.S. does not approve us taking a dispute with them to a court, you can't go to court. And you think that if the U.S. knows that there's a bad case, it will give you approval to take them to court. And yet, we have signed this agreement which says that if the U.S. does not agree, you cannot take the U.S. to court. Hey, babe. The aggrieved party cannot take the perpetrator to court unless the perpetrator agrees that take me to court. And intelligent, responsible statesmen and so on have gone, they entered into this agreement and they carried it in confidence to Parliament for ratification. And strangely, our Parliament also says, yes, we cannot take the United States to court if we have a dispute with them unless the United States allows us to take them to court. Amen. Now, that is not the end of the matter. We have also put in the agreement, that if the United States soldiers come into this country and they kill Ghanaians, they kill our soldiers and so on, we are not entitled to compensation. We cannot demand compensation from the United States for killing soldiers, for killing Ghanaians and so on. Now, in that same agreement, we have agreed, we have accepted that, look, if the US soldiers come to Ghana and under some circumstances they come and demolish Radio Gold, Radio Gold cannot take the matter to court. It cannot claim compensation for that demolition. What is wrong with us? This is the agreement our president is supporting. This is the agreement Ghanaian citizens, some Ghanaian citizens are praising. And then, they say that, it is not abnormal. It happens all the time. It happens with UN operations. Hey, I nearly collapsed. UN operations. Now, we are putting the United States of America at par with the UN. How can you put the United States of America at par with the UN and still insist that you are not undermining national sovereignty? Because you see, the UN is the only body in the world which can declare war, legitimate war, on any country, the Security Council. And there's no law against it. In fact, when the Security Council declares war, the national sovereignty does not apply, and so on. The UN, the United Nations Organization, is an association of all countries in the world. You cannot equate the United States of America to the UN. You understand? It is not possible. You understand? And then one of the arguments that they make, which makes me absolutely sick, is this. Here one of them say that, how can you be talking about national sovereignty? When you need vaccines, you go to the Americans. Indeed, the Americans control your food. The Americans control your health. The Americans control everything. So don't talk about national sovereignty. Surrender more of your rights to them. What we should be doing, yes, it is true. I mean, we get vaccines from the United States of America. I'm surprised that after 61 years of independence, vaccines against polio and others are still given to us by the United States of America. What we should be doing is to take steps to reduce our dependence, our strategic dependence on the United States of America. Not to be taking steps to increase that dependence. So to say that because the US gives us vaccines, we should allow them to control our territory, to station all kinds of offensive weapons in our country and so on, is actually very, very sad. An admission of the fact that we are surrendering our national sovereignty. And it makes me really sick. You understand? Now, I've looked at the agreement very, very carefully, and I'm worried. The president says that, the immunities and privileges we are giving to the U.S. soldiers are virtually the same as the immunities and privileges we give to staff of missions like the World Bank, like the IMF, and so on. Now, if even that were the case, that would be a major problem. Even if that were the case, that would be a major problem. It would be a major problem to the extent that there is something called the principle of reciprocity in international relations. There's a principle of reciprocity in international relations. So if you are giving U.S. soldiers these privileges and immunities and so on, those privileges and immunities must necessarily accrue to our own soldiers. Do they? Only a couple of weeks. The United States Embassy issued a statement, very telling statement, that from then on, Ghanaian parliamentarians, ministers, former heads of states and so on, if they want visas, they should go and queue up at the U.S. Embassy for visas. That is what the U.S. Embassy told us. That our ministers, our parliamentarians and so on, they should go and queue up like everybody else for visas. And yet when their soldiers are coming into our country, they don't need visas. They don't need passports. In fact, they just walk in and out as if they are walking to their bathrooms in Washington and New York. You understand? You cannot search them, you cannot question them, and so on. And our president says that when we go on UN peacekeeping operations, that is what happens. Are you comparing this to UN peacekeeping operations? What is the basis of comparison? UN, America, peace operations. Are they coming here for peace operations? Indeed, what we need to understand very clearly is that this military base is not going to be used by the United States of America to grow tomatoes and onions. They are not going to use this military base to learn how to play baseball. They are not going to use this military base to dance salsa and so on. They are going to use this military base to carry out military operations in the region. Now, if they're going to use this military base to carry out military operations in the region, there ought to be consequences. If we allow them to use our base to attack targets, to bomb other places and so on, why would those people who are targets of U.S. aggression not begin to see us as also legitimate targets? This is an issue which was not addressed in the president's speech. This is an issue which is waiting for answers and so on. I am highly, highly disappointed in what is happening. You know, we also have entered into an agreement which has no termination point. So, to all intents and purposes, this agreement can last for 50 billion years. If you follow this agreement strictly, it can last for 50 billion years. This agreement can last forever. The only clause in it which comes near to anything about termination is the clause which says that, look, if you want to abrogate this agreement, you must give 1 year's notice. 1 year's notice. That 1 year notice may be given in 5,000 years. It may be given in 10,000 years or 1 million years. That's a huge problem with this agreement. You know, the fact that we say that there is no termination clause in this agreement must be exceedingly, worrying for all, Ghanaians. There is something else. There is something else which should be exceedingly worrying for any Ghanaian, who is minded to protect the national interest. And that is simply the fact that we have agreed that these facilities, they choose to call it facilities. Let us call it facilities. And whether you call it facilities or base or whatever, the agreement is a bad one. We have agreed that these facilities will be used by the United States Armed Forces. But when they come here to use the facilities and they leave the facilities should be locked. And that even in their absence, we should not have access to the facilities. But the facilities should be guarded by Ghanaian security personnel soldiers. Wow. I mean, what an insult to the Ghanaian soldier. American soldiers will come into your country, they will use a facility. You are not allowed to enter that facility. You cannot search them. You cannot ask them questions. And then when they leave, even in their absence, you cannot enter the facility, but you are supposed to guard it. And you have no right to enter the facility you are guarding. So you don't even know what you are guarding. You don't even know what you are guarding. So you expect Ghanaian soldiers to leave their wives in the house in the night to go and guard facilities that they don't know what is inside. I mean, what can be more insulting to the dignity of the Ghanaian soldier than this? I mean, clearly incredible. And we have agreed. Our defense minister agreed. Our interior minister agreed. And we took it to parliament. And the majority of parliamentarians agreed that we should treat Ghanaian soldiers this way. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. You know, just last night, I got a write-up from a gentleman called A.W. Suleiman. I want to read it, but I will edit portions. For my own reasons, I will edit portions because it's very instructive. And it reads, the headline is, Why Nanado Shouldn't Have Spoken. And says, it is sometimes better to be silent and keep people doubting about your level of intelligence than speak and confound everyone. Nanado says the Americans didn't request for a military base in the agreement, and he didn't offer one. Donald Trump knows that a direct request for a military base would be problematic, so he carefully avoided that moniker in the agreement, but still ended up getting what he wants, a military base. Donald Trump requested for a facility of facilities for the exclusive use of American soldiers in Ghana, and no Ghanaian is allowed there. American military and civil contractors will fly into Ghana to redesign, reconstruct the said facilities to meet the requirement of the U.S. Army. They will have a communication spectrum for the exclusive use of the American soldiers. The Americans will ship in every military wear that they will need whilst encamped in this facility. And every military wear is important. American military men will fly into Ghana living and working in this facility. A facility that is exclusively theirs for the period. Exclusively theirs. Do you need to state categorically clear in the agreement that this is a military base on offer? After agreeing to all of this, A.W. Suleiman wants to know whether you need to state that is a military base. And then he borrows a quotation. He says, let me borrow this quotation from Brigadier General Nuno Mensah. And the quotation starts. Obviously, when they come here, they will not hang in the air. They will definitely need a place to stay and keep their military equipment, which makes it a military base. I will leave out the last sentence because I don't want to repeat that. But I'm sure that many people have read it. I won't read the last sentence at all. And this is from A.W. Suleiman. Now, our president also says something which is very, very interesting. He says that, we have had military cooperation agreements with the United States. And that in all of these years, they have not abused the concessions and privileges we have given them. So therefore, we assume that the concessions and privileges we are giving them this time will also not be abused. My brother, look, I think that Ghana is part of the world. And it is absolutely important for us, in making decisions about our nation and so on, to take account of what is happening everywhere in the world. Especially when there's a foreign policy issue. Look, only last week, the Daily Mail of the United Kingdom reported that 54 women in Colombia have been abused by U.S. forces there. They actually kidnapped these 54 women, raped them, and filmed the rape, and sold the rape, the video of the rape, as pornographic material. They sold the tapes. This is reported by the Daily Mail of the UK. I hope that our president does not consider the Daily Mail also as anti-American. I mean, everybody knows the Daily Mail of the UK. They carried out this report. Now, I'm sure we've also seen videos of how U.S. soldiers on their military base in Okinawa have behaved. The beating of innocent civilians, the harassment of whole communities, the sexual abuse of women, the rape of women, and so on. And that is why the people of Okinawa are organizing almost on a daily basis demonstrations and so on. You understand? And the story of U.S. military bases around the world is so clear. I mean, in Somalia, U.S. soldiers actually arrested Somali citizens and roasted them alive on fire. Our president is not aware of this. Our government is not aware of this. Look at what U.S. military contractors have done in Iraq. Blackwater, their record in Iraq, their record in Afghanistan, and so on. And we would not take account of that. Now, you see, one of the cooperation agreements we have signed with the U.S. was in the area of alumina, the VALCO agreement, and so on. Of course, that was not a military agreement. But who could have anticipated that a certain Dr. Odroid would come to serve in the VALCO hospital, and what he did was to drink the blood of his patients? Have you forgotten? Dr. Odroid. Yeah. Dr. Odroid, who did not have 1% of the immunity we are going to give to American soldiers and so on, came to serve in the VALCO hospital in Tema. And he used to have a spoon with which he scooped the blood of his patients and drank. When this matter became a major issue, he was smuggled out of this country and could not face the consequences. He had no such immunity and so on. Our government is not guided by this. You know, in fact, these are very, very sad moments. Very sad moments. Extremely sad moments. And you know, I've heard persons, if we talk, they say we are not security experts. We agree. If we talk, they say we don't have military background. We agree. If we talk, they say we are not lawyers. We agree. But Massa, some of the most highly respected lawyers in our country have spoken against this outrage. Who can doubt the legal credentials of Professor Akila Kwasoya? And he says that no, this thing is too dangerous. Let us be cautious. So I may not be a lawyer, but Professor Akila Kwasoya is a distinguished Ghanaian lawyer, well respected at the bar and well respected even at the bench. And he says, hold on, think through this properly. Yes, I am not a soldier, and so on. But Brigadier Nunu Mensah is a soldier. He was Chief of Defense Staff. And indeed, at one time, campaign manager of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. You understand? So, what about what he is saying? And you see, what the government seeks to do is to equalize and go down with its critics, especially the National Democratic Congress. But I think the government ought to realize that the voices of protest are not coming from the National Democratic Congress. Indeed, the National Democratic Congress in this instance, you may say, is far more, I'm choosing my words very carefully. I mean, the National Democratic Congress is more willing to be accommodating than some of us. Because what is the National Democratic Congress saying? That look, there are bad aspects of the agreement. So let us sit down, let us polish the agreement, and then we can sign it. That's what the National Democratic Congress is saying. What people like me are saying is that there should be no agreement. You understand? And I'm saying that there should be no such agreement because, yes, Africa has security problems. Ghana has security problems. The solution to the security problems we have, have been long designed. Listen to Nkrumah, listen to Sekoturi, listen to Modibo Keita, listen to Julius Nyerere, listen to Kenneth Kaunda and so on. All of them came to the conclusion that the way out of our security problems is not to sign these bilateral agreements with so-called world powers, but to build an African High Command. The solution is the African High Command, not these dangerous and useless agreements with the United States of America. So my solution is not to fine-tune this agreement. There's nothing to fine-tune about this agreement which sells national sovereignty. There's nothing to fine-tune about this agreement which degrades Ghanaian soldiers. There's nothing to fine-tune about this agreement which makes the American soldier superior to the British High Commissioner and superior to the Guinean ambassador and superior to the Nigerian High Commissioner. Nothing to fine-tune about this agreement. So my position is that if indeed we are committed to collective effort on resolving the security problems of Africa and its people, let us speed up the process of building the African High Command rather than entering into these bilateral agreements which are inimical to our interests. Master, thank you very much.
That brings us to 8 minutes to the top of the hour, 12. I will go through, if I can, most of the text messages that have come through this morning on Facebook, on Twitter as well. Let me go through the Twitter messages first before I go to those of Facebook. Okay, so on Twitter, Paka Ahiaba tweets and says, okay, Baba Musa tweets and says, someone who embarked on a peaceful demonstration and someone who declared all die we die, which of these two people is reckless? President Akufo-Addo's address only vindicated Julian Assange's WikiLeaks, who said Akufo-Addo lacks organizational skill. We no go agree. George Kuntublansen tweets and says, Sammy, can I have the ALHAJI and ALHAJI WhatsApp number to send you a voicemail? I'm sorry, but ALHAJI and ALHAJI hasn't got a WhatsApp number. We use Twitter and Facebook. Hack BS tweets and says, I'm deeply sad as a Ghanaian, so as every patriotic Ghanaian should be. The president's speech last 2 nights is highly undemocratic. Will you be surprised that even some U.S. political theorists are saying is a one-sided deal? The president should listen to the people of Ghana. Paka Ahiaba tweets and says, can we say we are in a state of paranoia? I miss Dr. David Percy. Erefua Abesim tweets and says, Sam, I thought you announced that Eddie Tamaklo was going to be your panel member. How come we did not hear his voice throughout the entire show? Yes, he was supposed to have been here, but he's been attending to other matters as well. So do pardon me for the announcement and for not announcing that he was not going to be here. Akoto Wazak tweets and says, a member of the NPP in the Tamale brought a group of young men to stop some construction work at Gumani opposite the Garaba Lodge led by ALHAJI Joe Kadira. Okay, Patrick Aaron tweets and says, indeed, anything American is genuine. That's why Hinanado found their speech and plagiarized it. Now America is demanding payment for the plagiarism. That is how come he chooses to insult inferior Ghanaians. Habib from Salom says, if the president is calling Ghanaians who are protecting our sovereignty to America as anti-American, can we also say our president is anti-Ghanaian? The president has no moral right to insult us the way he did. Let's resist the oppressor's rule. I will repeat that. Christian Addo tweets and says, I was shocked by the president of our country on this U.S. military base agreement when he addresses the nation on this issue. This one from Abebrese Ayukwa. I hope I got the pronunciation of your name correct. You say, Sam, sometimes I don't understand why you allow some of your members to run beyond your time. You are the moderator of the show and you must be firm. And I don't like how Mr. Pan sometimes heckles you. You sent that one to Believer Dixon from
this program is not
Dixon.
About time. This program is about the capacity to explain things, to put things right and so on. That's how we constructed this program. Unfortunately for me, I'm one of those who constructed this program. This program is not about heckling people and so on and stopping people in the middle of their presentation. This is a program designed to allow panelists to speak elaborately about the issues and so on. And in any case, today, what is the problem with time? We are finished before time.
8 minutes before time.
We are finished 8 minutes before time. So what's the problem?
I can say, Mr. Pratt, as much as you make the point that time is not really that much the relevant thing, but if Mr. Edith Tamakula had been here, what would have happened?
But he wasn't here.
Yes, but if he had been here.
No.
But was he here?
Lawyer,
I agree.
the point has
Was he
to be made. The point has to be made.
I had to
even
I had to extend my discussion
I extended
beyond
mine
what
too.
I've discussed because there was a vacuum created by the.
Yes, but the point has to be made. If we are all talking about the time not being of essence.
No, that's
if
not what question
you see, if the point is being made that people must be given the time to exhaust whatever views they want to exhaust. Okay, but the point is, people must also be told that look, you have these minutes to work with. If you exceed that by maybe some 5-10 minutes, it's acceptable.
Who has exceeded time today?
For today, do you know the number of hours I gave Mr.
No.
I gave him an
Was
hour
it wrong?
and 30 minutes.
Was it wrong?
Chief,
Was it wrong?
Let's proceed.
Mr. Jean, was it
Ambassador,
wrong?
let's proceed.
Was it wrong?
Let's proceed.
Honestly, today,
Ambassador,
this is the first time.
Let's
This is
proceed.
the first time we are having this discussion, and it's something very good. You see, when all the panelists are on the program, we all go within time. But I think that I was even thinking that being the ranking member for Foreign Affairs, he had more to elaborate, and that's why he took advantage of Edu's thing. We shouldn't give the impression to our listeners that there's a scuffle between you and anybody.
No. It was just a comment from a listener.
I was willing to surrender some of my time to Mr. Kudetu because he's in the thick of the thing.
Okay, as a foreign minister,
He was in parliament, he took part in all the negotiations and discussions and so on. And he is speaking and explaining things to us and he wants to cut his time.
Can I use the rest of the time?
we appreciate the concern of the test.
Elikim Kotoko sends the message, if our president can't serve his people, then he can't lead them either. Take note, we are no longer even surprised anymore at Nana Akufo-Addo as our president. And Sanchez Nana Marshall tweets and says, after selling our sovereignty for a paltry sum, Akufo-Addo is busily acquiring properties in the UK. Our God shall surely speak. That's your message this morning. Let me go to.
You know that as a fact.
Okay. Yeah, that's the point. I have no idea about any building of that nature. And so we delink ourselves from that message. Let me read a few Facebook comments as well before the sports guys take over from us with the Gold Power Sports. This one here reads, it's from Kent Farouk. He says, obviously when they come here, they will not hang in the air. They will definitely need a place to stay and keep their military equipment, which is a military base. That's from Brigadier General Nunu Mensah. This one from Percocet, Kwame Aristocrat. He says, just one demonstration and Nana can't contain it. I'm yet to understand if Nana was anti-American when he opposed Kit Motu. Just one demonstration and he found his face to insult Ghanaians within a period of 2009 to 2016. Nana led 59 violent demonstrations 59 demonstrations under Mills Mahama administration, but not found his face addressing his all die be die comment. Instead of explaining to Ghanaians who oppose this obnoxious defense agreement, Nana insulted all of us. That's from Percocet, Kwame Aristocrat. Komla Genya says, in his usual arrogant manner, this president who criticized and threatened every leader of Ghana led demonstrations and even took winner of a credible election to court, decided to insult Ghanaians who expressed their genuine opinion on a national issue. Quite a lengthy one you sent through. Starring Wendell sends the message, the president's speech last Thursday was insulting and outlandish. He missed an opportunity to allay our fears. Musa Abatwa in Kumasi says, Seshana was atrociously sad after listening to President Akufo-Addo respond to the genuine concerns from all sections of society. It was most unfortunate that your comment. AU Farouk sends the message. Good morning to you, ESHUN, and to your panelists. In fact, The president throws his anger on the opposition throughout his address, but that clueless and incoherent address will not stop us from demonstrating our displeasure towards the sale of Ghana. Freeman Manwenyaga Davison says, if the president is referring to those who are against the US-Ghana agreement as anti-America, was he and the Ghanaian then an anti-America when he led Ghanaian delegates to vote against making Jerusalem the capital of Israel? Ken Kalishi, okay. It's unfortunate, but Ken, your message, I can't see the message, so let me just leave it there. That brings us to 12 midday, and the show, 1 minute, sir. 1 minute, sir.
Let me talk about this one.
Yes, the show was partly brought to us by TT Brothers Limited. They are the suppliers of the premium malt, that's the Ankoti premium malt, quite tasty, extra energy, extra vitality, and it's a non-alcoholic malt drink. It's produced in Poland, and it's in all leading supermarkets in the country. You can go to TT Brothers Limited, Nungwa Barrier, Maracuja House on the Beach Road, and Kuti House of the Tema Aflao Road, and you can call them on 02304481 or 0501396377 or 05073963378. They are the proud sponsors of the show. The show has been live on the Facebook wall of PAB-MC and also live on Radio Gold 905 FM on Facebook. For those of you who have been monitoring, I know most of you sent in lots and lots of text messages, but I could not get a chance to read those text messages you sent on the show via the PAB-MC wall. This morning, our topic for discussion has been a thorough look at the agreement between Ghana and the United States of America to establish military base in Ghana, and the president's statement to the nation on the agreement. We critically analyzed that. To have helped me to do this, Mr. Kwesi Pratt Jr., the managing editor of the Insight newspaper, the Honorable Sammy Okujeto Ablakwa MP for North Tongue and ranking member on Foreign Affairs Committee in Parliament, Ambassador Sampiyale, Ghana's former High Commissioner to India. Let me apologize on behalf of lawyer Godwin Edigi Tamaklo for not being able to turn up. He later sent me a message that he had been caught up in another assignment, and that's how come he was not able to turn up today. So kindly pardon us for his absence. On that note, we come to the end of today's edition of ALHAJI and ALHAJI, the mother of all talk shows. We're back Monday morning, 5:50 a.m. for the Gold Power Drive. Have a real blessed morning. My name is Samuel Ishem. Production is being by Patrick Asfo-Bodu, and the technical crew who supported us. We are grateful to you as well for the fantastic work done today. And to you, the listener, for staying from 8 until 12, we are grateful to you as well for making the choice to be with us. Have a real pleasant Saturday.